Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Troy City Council. It's Monday, April 3rd, 2020, 7 p.m. You're in Council Chambers here in City Hall. We'll begin this evening's meeting with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance given by Mrs. Marshall. Please stand.
Dear Lord, we ask that you guide us to work as a team, to have a productive meeting, enabling us to achieve great results. And I also ask that you watch over our first responders and our military and keep them safe. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Marshall. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Twist?
Here. Here.
Mr. Rozelle?
Here.
Mrs. Marshall?
Here.
Mr. Whiddon?
Here.
Mr. Sievert?
Present.
Mr. Pierce? Mr. Phillips? Mr. Schilling? Mrs. Snee?
Move to excuse Mr. Phillips.
Second. It has been moved by Mr. Sievert to excuse Mr. Phillips, seconded by Mr. Whiddon. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Rozelle?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whiddon?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes. Move to excuse Mr. Pierce.
Second.
It has been moved to excuse Mr. Pierce by Mr. Twist, seconded by Mr. Sievert. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whiddon?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozelle?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Move to excuse Mr. Schilling.
Second. It has been moved to excuse Mr. Schilling by Mr. Sievert, seconded by Mr. Rozelle. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Whiddon?
Yes.
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozelle?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Excuse Mrs. Snee.
Second.
And it has been moved by Mr. Whiddon to excuse Mrs. Snee, seconded by Mr. Twist. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Sievert?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozelle?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whiddon?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. This time we will open up the public hearing for Ordinance 016, 2023. We will kindly ask Mrs. Knight to please read the ordinance.
Ordinance 016, 2023, an ordinance changing the zoning of parcel number D08-101788 in the city of Troy, Ohio from M2 Light Industrial District to a Planned Development Industrial and approving the general plan of the Troy Storage Inns of America Planned Development Industrial.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. The floor is open for any public comments on this ordinance. If you wish to address council, you're invited to come to the podium, give your name and address, and take as much time as you wish to consume for this public hearing. Seeing no one coming forward, we will declare the public hearing closed. We'll ask Mrs. Knight to read a summary of the minutes of the last two meetings of Troy City Council.
First will be March 20th, the regular meeting. Committee reports. Community Partnerships Committee recommended legislation be prepared, urging Congress and the Ohio Legislature to enact legislation regarding rail safety. Committee recommended legislation be prepared for the notwithstanding wording for the Troy Truck Yard event. Finance Committee recommended that legislation be prepared to approve the recommendations on the enterprise zone agreements and the TIF. Law and Ordinance Committee recommended legislation be prepared requesting a liquor control hearing on an application for the railroad restaurant. Recreation and Parks Committee recommended legislation be prepared authorizing execution of the consent of field naming document by the Park Board President. Also recommended legislation be prepared to temporarily activate the DORA during Treasure Island concerts. Resolution number R19, 2023 regarding rail safety, first reading and adopted. Resolution number R2023, recommendations of Tax Incentive Review Council regarding enterprise zones, first reading and adopted. Resolution R21, recommendations of the Tax Incentive Review Council regarding the TIF, first reading and adopted. Resolution number R22, a hearing on a liquor permit was given first reading and adopted. Resolution number R23, consent to form to field naming document, first reading and adopted. Resolution to Robert Fletcher in memoriam was approved. Ordinance number 010, 2023, beekeeping added to residential and other areas was given third reading and adopted. Ordinance number 013, 2023, Treasure Island non-ticketed use agreements, first reading and adopted. Ordinance number 014, certain real property in the Dora refreshment area will be used on August 5th and June 24th, first reading and adopted. Ordinance number 015, 2023, approving the truck yard was given first reading and adopted. There was a presentation by Troy Main Street, and then council adjourned at 8:06.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. House council wishes to dispose of minutes.
approve.
Second.
It's been moved to approve the March 20 minutes by Mr. Rozell and seconded by Mr. Twist. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Sievers?
Yes.
They are approved.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. Mrs. Knight, will you continue with the March 31st, 2023
Yes.
special meeting of Troy City Council?
Minutes of council, March 31, 2023. The special notice of meeting was acknowledged and read. Committee reports, buildings and utilities, recommended legislation be prepared authorizing bidding for contract for miscellaneous water and meter parts. Committee recommended legislation be prepared regarding a professional service agreement for the design of the Maple Street and Peters Road Improvement Project. Also, committee recommended legislation be prepared for the bidding of that project. Law and Ordinance Committee recommended executing a sole source agreement with Motorola Solutions Incorporated and a sole source agreement with related to automatic license plate reading cameras. Streets and Sidewalks Committee recommended legislation be prepared authorizing appropriations for properties for the West Main Street Improvement Phase 2. Resolution R24, contract for water meter parts, first reading and adopted. Resolution R25, professional services agreement, Access Engineering, design Maple Street Peters Road project, first reading and adopted. Resolution R26, bid for the Maple Street and Peters Road project, first reading and adopted. Resolution R27, contract with Motorola Solutions, was given first reading and adopted. Resolution number R28, contract for automated license plate reading system, first reading. Ordinance 017, petition for appropriation of certain property, first reading and adopted. Ordinance number 018, appropriation of certain property for West Main Street, first reading and adopted. Ordinance 019, petition for appropriation of certain real estate for West Main, first reading and adopted. Meeting adjourned 6:21.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. House council wishes to dispose of the minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
It's been moved to approve the minutes by Mr. Rozell, seconded by Mr. Sievert. Mrs. Knight, please call the roll.
Mr. Rozell?
Yes.
Mrs. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Whidden?
Yes.
Mr. Sievers?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. We have no committee reports tonight, but we do have one resolution and one ordinance on the agenda. If you wish to speak to council about either of those items, you're invited to come to the podium, give your name and address. You have 2 minutes to address council, and Mr. Kerber will be our timekeeper this evening. Seeing none, we'll go into resolutions. We'll ask Mrs. Knight to read the only resolution of the night, Resolution R28, 2023.
Resolution number R28, 2023. Resolution authorizing Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio to enter into a government agency agreement with Flock Group, Inc., a sole source vendor for an automatic license plate reading system. This is the second reading.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight, and this will stand as the second reading and will be held over for a third reading at our next meeting. Moving on to ordinances. Mrs. Knight, will you read the only ordinance of the evening, Ordinance 016, 2023?
Ordinance number 016, 2023. An ordinance changing the zoning of parcel number DO8 101-788 in the city of Troy, Ohio, from M2 Light Industrial District to a Planned Development Industrial, PDI, and approving the general plan of the Troy Storage Inns of America Planned Development Industrial. This is located at 1271 Bruckner Drive. This rezoning has been recommended by the Troy Planning Commission, and this will be on the next committee meeting agenda. Second reading.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. In consideration of the public hearing tonight, this will stand as a second reading and will be held over for our third reading at our next meeting. Moving on to communications and announcements. Mrs. Knight, do we have any?
Only the reminder about filing a financial disclosure statement.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight.
By midnight.
Moving on to comments of officials. Mayor Oda.
I have nothing this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Director of Public Service and Safety, Mr. Tippington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one announcement. So, Saturday morning, bright and early, we haven't confirmed it yet because they haven't updated the weather information from the National Weather Service. I know they confirmed one in Wapak. But I haven't seen a confirmation yet for north of Troy. But apparently it got close enough, or at least the high winds were close enough to the northern part of Troy that it did cause some debris, damage, destruction, relatively minor in the grand scheme of things, but it was isolated. It was not a citywide. We had contemplated doing a special brush cleanup. There is brush that's out there, and we will get on social media and probably do a press release. Our thought, though, is that we have the annual spring cleanup starting next Monday, April 10th through the 14th. That does allow for not only additional trash, but also brush that can be picked up. So we'll be asking people to just pile it on the regular day of trash, just pile the brush out there, and then we will get that as part of that service.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Director of Law, Mr. Kirbert.
I have no comments this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirbert. Do any council members have any comments this evening?
I have a comment.
Mr. Siebert.
Mr. President, on behalf of the at-large council members, I'd like to thank the individuals who came to meet the at-large council members on March 25th at Hayner. We had 11 people sign in who were not at-large members. Lasted about a half an hour longer than it was scheduled. We had some engaging discussion, and this is one of the things that we hear all the time is that we don't want to come to the dais. We don't understand what's going on at council. We had a long discussion about sort of the processes of council there, and I think it was informative as to what emergency meant to some people who didn't understand, and how we sort of process legislation through this body. And we will continue to do them approximately quarterly, and I would strongly recommend if you have an interest in how council works, or you have any issues with the city, keep your eyes and ears open and attend. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Siebert. Any other council members? Do any staff members have any comments this evening? Seeing none, we'll open up to audience comments. If you wish to address council on any topic, this is your time. Please come to the podium, give your name and address, and take as much time as you wish to consume.
Good evening. Ben Southerly, Troy Historic Preservation Alliance, 110.5 West Main Street. On behalf of THPA, I would like to thank the City of Troy for taking action last Friday to bring an end to the mess at 118 West Main Street by filing the amended complaint. The incident that occurred last Wednesday morning was an affront to our city and to its citizens, and it must be dealt with severely and decisively. So I commend you for your amended complaint against 116 West Main Street and Mr. Kimmel. I commend you for asking the court to require the repair of the property and bring it up to code. And I commend you for taking steps to finally get the sidewalk reopened after more than 3 years. We urge you, if you're granted permission by the court, to take action to make repairs to the building and assess those costs to 116 West Main Street and to Mr. Kimmel. And I hope that the city will work to recoup the $24,000 in facade grant money awarded for Mr. Kimmel's other downtown properties. I'm grateful that THPA and neighboring property owners were finally granted access to 112 to 118 West Main Street, and we look forward to the actual condition of this building becoming public knowledge soon. We believe that this very historic building, with its unique and powerful story, can have a very promising future and contribute a great deal to our beautiful downtown if it is in the right hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address council this evening? Seeing no one, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you for attending. Our next meeting will be April 17th, 7 p.m., right here in City Council Chambers. Thank you for attending.